First, I think a lot of people forget the point or don't even understand the point of respect to begin with. Some people will say, yeah, respect. You got to respect me. I'm the C-level leader here, right? When I come in, you stand up because it's my title. No, that's not the respect, and that's not the point of respect. The true point of respect is contribution. That's the goal of this. The goal is mutual respect where anybody at any level of your organization is willing to raise their hand and say, excuse me, I think I have a better idea, a good idea. I think we should do X instead of Y. Their willingness to raise their hand without retribution is how you start to truly build a high-performance team.
That was Alden Mills, and this is the Brendan Carr Podcast. Today my guest is Alden Mills. Alden's a former Navy SEAL. He was a 3-time platoon commander. He's the former CEO of Perfect Fitness, one of the fastest growing companies in America, and he's the author of Unstoppable Teams. Today, Alden and I discuss his philosophy on leadership and how it begins with leading oneself, and then leading your team, and then being a leader to your community and your customers. And he shares unique insights from his experience both in the corporate world and as a Navy SEAL. Well, Alden, my first question is, how did you decide to become a Navy SEAL?
I decided to become a Navy SEAL when I was at the Naval Academy in my junior year, and I ran into this Navy SEAL that was on campus, and he came up to me, and at that point I had just been elected the captain of the crew. Mm-hmm. And so SEALs, they're always looking for people who have done rigorous suffering sports, like wrestling and water polo, and of course there's people come out of other sports who have been exemplary as well, but those are easy areas for recruiting. And he pulled me aside and he said, "Hey Mills, you ever think of SEAL team before?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know." And, "Well, what do they do, sir?" And he goes, "Well, you ever been bullied?" And I thought for a second, and I was like, well, yeah, this one time. He goes, "I just asked if you've been bullied. I don't need to hear the story." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "Well, that's what we do. You see, SEALs, we go around the world and we knock back bullies. You interested in that?" And I was like, "Oh, that sounds kind of interesting." And I really wasn't that fired up about sitting on a ship for long periods of time. And to be brutally honest, I had some pretty horrific seasickness drills down in the bowels of ships before. So I was like, oh, I'd rather be up on the surface or at least in the water. Mm-hmm. And that coupled with the fact that I was rowing, and rowing was this perfect team-focused entree in the SEAL team. It was a great transition. So those were kind of the driving factors to go into being a SEAL.
Yeah, and it seems rowing is a huge part of your story. What was it about rowing that was similar to the SEAL teams?
The most similar thing, I mean, there are actually so many different parallels, but for one, I rowed in an 8. So you had 8 rowers. Literally, SEAL platoons are made up of 2 8-man teams, which are called squads. And then they break down into fire teams. And then they break down into a swim pair called a swim buddy. So you had the organizational structure that was really simple. But more importantly, you had a culture of team that no one person was more important than the other, that everybody were key contributors. And that's the beauty of rowing, is that it's all about getting 8 blades in the water at the same time. There's no MVP or high point scorer. And it's the same thing that goes with SEAL team. Now, people may hear like, yeah, but that guy, he shot more people than the other person. But that's not how it is in a SEAL platoon. Everybody is of equal importance because you need everybody to complete that mission together.
So how did that mindset then translate to business? Because in business, you hear so much about star players and the people who are getting the sales and these heroic entrepreneurs who are really lionized. Where is the parallel there?
There were actually quite a number of parallels. And I'll tell you, one of the key parallels, before I even get to the whole team element, was this thing called X Division when they put you through SEAL training. Mm-hmm. And X Division is where they pull out everybody with a negative attitude. They're basically the quitters. But SEAL training is subjective as well as it is objective. The objective is, you didn't pass the run, you didn't pass the swim, you're out. You go to X Division. The subjective is all these trainers are active SEALs. They're going back into a platoon. So they're evaluating you subjectively to say, is this somebody that I could trust in combat? Is this somebody that I'm going to want to serve with for long periods of time in hazardous duty? And they would randomly come up like, you know what? You just don't have the right attitude for us. Goodbye. Wow. And they would be looking at it and evaluating it with a cultural lens. And when you think about when you move to the business world, if you look at all the great businesses out there, and I'm not saying the business I created was the end all be all, but we certainly applied the same technique. And that technique was we hired for culture first. Yes, it's always important to have competent, smart, hungry people, but are they going to be cultural fits for what we're doing? Mm-hmm. And sure, sales can always seem like it gets all the glory, but at the end of the day, there were three things that we did, and we hammered this home. And I called it the 3 Ps. And they were, you can always promote. Anybody in this company can help us promote, whether it be in sales or marketing, letting other people know about the products we make and the mission of our company. Number 2, you can always identify a process that isn't working correctly, is broken, or we need a process for something. And number 3, anybody in the company can create a new product idea. Now, if you take the 3 Ps, that's really a spin-off of what I was doing in SEAL Team. Because in SEAL Team, anybody could come up with a new standard operating procedure. That would be a process. Mm-hmm. Anybody could come up with a new idea. And SEALs are wildly entrepreneurial. There's lots of SEALs that would constantly be creating something new to help us get our mission done. And actually, the military rewarded people with coming up with new cost-saving ideas or improvements to gear. And number 3, are we selling? In a way we are. Everybody gets involved in the mission. They get involved in the mission, when I was in, we had to go pitch our mission against other units. And I would randomly pick in different people from the platoon to help me go pitch these missions because they were a key part of that mission. Mm-hmm. So there are some direct correlations. Now, I think it's also really important for people to hear there are things that work in SEAL Team that do not work as a civilian. They are different environments. And, for instance, in SEAL Team, you have a totally different military code of justice. I mean, there's a different law base that you follow, right? And you can't punish people like you could in SEAL Team as a civilian. So there are some differences, but the cultural similarities are vast.
Mm-hmm. So you've made a distinction about leading yourself. It's hard as a leader, you're always getting pulled to the team needs. How do you know how to lead yourself first?
You are. And I think the big correlation that everyone should appreciate, and I'm going to take this all the way back to the customer. And if you ask somebody, hey, what's a brand? And people will be like, well, I don't know. It's a promise. It's what we wrote down. It's like, this is our brand statement. But at the end of the day, a brand is really nothing more than a reflection of the culture of the organization that you work in. And the reflection of the culture comes from the people's actions inside of it, the teams, the groups that are taking those actions. And the final hop of reflection brings it back to the leader, that a team's actions are a reflection of the leader. So it goes brand to culture, culture to team, team to leader. And if you think of it in that light, then you should always be thinking about how can I learn to better lead myself? Because every action I take is going to get emulated by those people that I have had the opportunity to lead. And I want to add one other thing. When we talk about leading, some people will say, well, we're servant leaders out there. I'm like, okay, totally agree. But to me, that's just a redundancy. Leading is serving, and serving is caring. To lead is to serve is to care. And as you start to build out your arsenal of different leadership capabilities, the first thing you really want to be thinking about is that internal conversation that we all have. I call that internal conversation the whiner and the whisperer, the mental and the emotional. Now, if you think about it, there's only three things we can control. There is a fourth, that would be the spiritual, but the three that I really want to focus on are the mental, the emotional, and the physical. The physical is nothing more than a vehicle waiting for us to make a decision to do an output, right? If we're lucky enough to move our arms and legs and so on and so forth, then we're really just as good as our body's capability to do and perform work. It's the mental and emotional conversation that becomes the real challenge. The mental usually is our whiner. The mental is based off of the brain. The brain is this organ that decides what we want to do versus what we can or can't do. And the brain is constantly looking for the comfort zone. It's constantly looking for the easiest path. It doesn't want to do more work than it has to. But the emotional has a little bit of a higher purpose behind it. The emotional is like thinking about, whoa, what if we could do this? What would that be like? The emotional is that quieter voice inside of us going, keep going, get up, try again. While the whiner is saying things like, do you know how hard this is going to be? Who do you know's done this? Why do you think that you can do this? You didn't do X, Y, or Z in school. How do you think you could do that? I mean, by the way, I had the whiner all the time when I was writing this book. I mean, I wasn't Mr. English AP master. I didn't even take AP English. But, we have that voice. We all have them.
Well, now I'm curious. How did you deal with that voice?
I dealt with it the same way you dealt with it in SEAL Team, the same way we dealt with it in the last 500 meters of a race. You have to decide, hey, if I take the short term out, what's that's going to make me feel like for the long term? And I always jump to the end. And in the book, I talk about these outcome accounts. And what's the positive of me accomplishing this? And what's the negative of me? What's the negative of me saying, you know what? I'm calling it. I'm not going to go do it. I'm going to give up. You know what? My whiner's right. Why would I think I could write a book when I barely passed, English? And then you start going, well, wait a minute. What's it feel like 20 years from now when I'm talking to my kids and I'm telling them, hey, don't do what dad did. Don't quit. Take the other path. Who wants those kind of regrets? Right?
Right.
And that's the whole point about the outcome. But you have to really get to terms with my short-term decision is going to have a long-term impact. And the more you can understand that impact, that result, the easier it is to contain the whiner and listen to the whisperer.
So you have this why, this drive that sets apart your goals, and you stay on track that way. That's incredible.
It is. And, the why, there's lots of conversations about the why. The why is definitely important, but you have to have the how, right? The how of, okay, we got to get back up and do this again. I can have all the why in the world, but you have to be able to put the how to work, because that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. So how do you go about setting the goals that drive you to this sort of thing? You talk in your book about having over the horizon goals for a team and for oneself, How do you pick that why that's going to keep you going?
Well, so defining the over the horizon goal, by the way, the things that we're talking about in this book, these aren't like, all right, we're putting a team together to take care of the water cooler for the year or to take care of the coffee. I'm talking about, when I created my business to bring a new to the world product, something that was going to take months, if not years, to bring out, something that was everybody else was telling us this is a stupid idea, it can't be done, but this small core group of committed people stuck with it and said, no, this is going to be great. We're going to envision this future. And break. A side note that everyone should appreciate on this podcast is we are the only organism that we know of that can perform transcendence. And transcendence is nothing more than envisioning a future. It's also our ability to envision someone else's perspective, to envision someone else's emotion, which I bring that up because that's a key piece of understanding how to lead the conversation with yourself, because that same conversation is going to be led and needing to be led by others on your team. So the more you grapple with that internal conversation, the better you'll be at helping others combat the exact same challenges that you're facing. We're not different. We're all looking for very similar things, right? Success, safety, comfort, all of those pieces. So the more you can understand, like, hey guys and gals, we're going to suffer for a while. This is going to be hard. And calling it right out and then saying, but here's why we're doing it. And here's how we're going to get across the horizon. I know right now you can't see it. I know it's like being out at sea and all you see are waves and wind and currents pushing us in the wrong direction. But way past there, there's this lush green island with beautiful beaches, and it's where our new idea is going to be. And our new idea is going to have this kind of impact with the people that we work for and we serve in our community. And that's part of the leader's job, is to practice that transcendence, to practice envisioning this is why we're here. So when you get stuck and that whiner comes out, stay with me because it's going to be worth it. And here's why. And just that's a big piece of what a leader's job is. Reminding people why we're doing it and reminding them that how we are doing this is going to pay off. And so you asked about how do I come up with setting the goals? Sorry for getting a little off track on that.
That's great.
A lot of times, Brendan, they're personal. They're things that are pertinent to me, to my 4 boys, to my family, to things that are fulfilling to me both mentally and emotionally. I'm a little bit past the, I want to have X of things, whether it's in a bank account or in a zip code or in the garage. By the way, I'm the first to say, like, I love cars. I don't have my dream car right now, but that's because there are experiences that are more important to me right now than a thing, right? And I would challenge, especially everybody who's just starting out, not to forget that you are in the prime of your life. If you're 25, 30, 35, 40, I mean, I just turned 50 and I still think of myself being in the prime. Now, I definitely take more time to recuperate from climbing a big mountain than I used to. But don't forget, everybody seems to kind of miss, like, okay, now's the time to lock myself in a cubicle at the ripe old age of 25, when actually that's the worst time to be locked into a cubicle, right? Like, don't forget that you have the ability to create a destiny that you can be the lead actor in. You can be the superhero in that. But you have to start thinking creatively of, like, okay, what is it that I want? What do I want when I'm 80, sitting on the porch, bouncing my grandkids, and they're asking me, hey, tell me about your life, Grandpa. or grandma. What are those things? And I got to tell you, I dream with reckless abandon all the time. I go for a walk almost every morning. It's somewhat of a meditative walk / prayer walk. No electronics. I look at the green leaves on the trees. I listen to the wind, and you just let your brain run wild. And you start going, wouldn't it be cool to climb the 7 summits, sail the 7 seas, and ski the 2 poles? What would that be like, right? Why not?
It sounds amazing.
Yeah. And what would be even better is to bring the people you love with you. And whether that's family members or good pals. And, we're on that right now. I'm not particularly excited about seeing those long lines on Everest right now, but we're going to go climb our 3rd summit in January down in South America, and they're a blast. They're wonderful. And getting those experiences now, like most of my big goals are all experiential, or they're goals in which, how can I help others? Because I get a lot of joy out of that. So I guess my rambling answer to your goal question is, what are things that bring me joy?
Wow.
They're experiences and helping others.
So how do you keep then developing yourself to keep reaching these goals and things when you're someone who's achieved so much? You've had the fastest growing consumer product in America. You've been a Navy SEAL. What do you do now to keep it all going?
Well, the first thing I do is I have a very short-term memory. And I'd like to think, and I do not consider myself a champion, but you could hear, some of the great coaches out there, champions have short-term memories. And I think they're right. Right? If you were to walk into my home, you'd have no idea that I was a Navy SEAL and led 3 platoons. You'd have no idea that I have all these patents or any of those things. My focus is on the future. We've got a big map of the world with red dots of different countries that we've been in. My family and I, we moved overseas for 2 years because we wanted to have that experience before the kids went to high school. And we went to 25 countries and 75 cities in 2 years. And by the way, this was on a budget. This wasn't like, oh, he's a multimillionaire and he could go live at the Ritz-Carlton for 2 years. We didn't do anything like that. We lived in Airbnbs. We rented our house. We sold some cars. They weren't even fancy cars, by the way, old SUVs. But you can do that. And we tried, and we just went for it.
Wow.
Part of it is just dreaming up what it is you want to do. And then the next piece is have the courage to get after it. You'll be surprised what happens when you commit and go all in.
So when you have built up this sense of leadership of self, then how do you go about starting to express that in a team environment?
Why do people get attracted to somebody else? Why do people want to join a team? I'm asking you that question.
That's a funny question because it's one of those ones that sometimes you don't really know. You don't know why. You just kind of fall for someone.
You fall for somebody usually in a couple of different reasons. One, that person is trustworthy. That person is someone you connect with. That person is like, maybe it has a magnetic personality, right? For better or for worse. But the other reason, and this is the more important reason, is that people are like, whoa, together we can do something way bigger than I could ever do by myself. That's what a team's really all about. It's about doing something much greater than what any single individual can do. I mean, let's be brutally honest here. A team, not a group of individuals. Most people mistake a group of individuals for a team. A true team will always be an individual or a group of individuals. And the great challenges that our society faces today, at any level, pick it, I don't care. You need teams. And you need teams that are selfless. And see, the big difference between a group of individuals and teams is moving from our natural selfish instincts to one of selflessness. John Wooden used to say, it's amazing what a team can do when nobody cares who gets the credit.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
But to get to that point, to move from selfishness to selflessness, requires a leader that is going to set and model the way for being selfless. And how best to be selfless than to show how much you care. Mm-hmm. To show how much you care about each of the team members that are joining the team, and not just about what they're doing inside the walls of your organization, but what are they doing for the 2/3 of their time outside? How can you help them? What are their goals? Do you know their goals? Have you asked them their goals? Have you asked them 1, 3, and 5-year goals? That's the sort of thing I did in SEAL team with my platoons. I'd make all these SEALs, all these rough and tumble guys, sit down and write out 1 and 3 and 5-year goals, top 3. And then I'd want to figure out ways how I could help them. Mm-hmm. And then, a funny thing happens. People go, hey, he just helped me get into a school to learn a new language, or he helped me get to sniper school, or he helped me get to, I'm picking on SEAL team at the moment, but it could be like we had this wonderful industrial designer, and he's like, Alden, my real goal is I really want to work for the Intel think tank. I'm like, okay, well, let's figure out a way to get you there. And in the process, we'll be better for having helped you because you will have helped create some new products for us. Mm-hmm. And he got there, and we helped him. And it was such a joy to be like, hey, stand on my shoulders. Let me help you go to that next pace. But the moment you can start to think of yourself as that servant, that person, like, I'm here to guide you, to help you be more than what you originally thought possible. And for some period of time, you'll be with us. And what a joy that will be, because we're going to make some magic happen. Mm-hmm. That's what leading's about. And that's why people will be attracted to a team, because they'll be like, you know what? That team's not only going to do something greater than what we could do, but I'm going to become better myself by being a part of that.
Yeah. And it seems that's not only, exciting to the individual, but it's contagious in the group, and it's fun too, I think, to see people around us who achieve, like you mentioned in the book too. There was a gentleman who you helped with a commissioning program, did the Seaman
Yes,
and
that's right.
You get to look at him now, and you said he's a senior officer in the SEAL teams and things like that, and to see where he's come. I mean, these are things that don't just happen in a moment, but that ripple into years and years ahead. It's incredible.
Oh, that's some of the best joys of my life, is watching the people that somewhere along the line, I just had a little hand in helping. Not even a big hand, just a little hand. How great is that?
It's incredible.
When you start, and if more leaders took that approach, team building doesn't have to be difficult.
Yeah.
But it's very hard, because I don't know, a lot of leaders out there are like, no, I get the credit. I did all the great things. And then when things go sideways, they're the first to point their fingers at somebody else. Well, it's because that person screwed up. No, it's the opposite.
So this caring for other people, this is a foundation of your care framework, or the loop that it is. What's next after that?
Well, so first you lead yourself. The big meat of the book is then in the care loop. And I break care down into the 4 actions of connect, achieve, respect, empower. And it's a never-ending loop. It's not a destination. And then the final piece of it is getting people to understand that there are other people besides your direct teammates that are on this team. I call those the 3 C's. And that when you activate these 3 C's, which are customers, contributors, and your community. And by the way, customers, you could say like, well, I'm in a nonprofit. I don't have any customers. I'm like, of course you have customers. Your customers could be the people you're trying to help, or, the people you're raising the money from or giving the money to. But there is always, if there's a team, there's a customer. And The contributors, a lot of people will say like, yeah, well, they're not really on the team. They're just, that's Ray, the UPS man. And Ray, the UPS man, was an actual person for us, and we adored him.
Yeah.
And he was critical to getting us parts we needed for our prototyping that we used all the time inside our R&D lab.
Yeah.
And if Ray didn't show up in time to get those parts, we couldn't get the next pieces of these prototypes done on time. And so he became a team member. Ray would get product. We'd teach him how to work out. He'd come in. We'd celebrate things with him. Was he a paying team member? No. Did we pay for his services? Absolutely. Did we send him a Christmas card? No question. Was he feeling like he was part? Yes. On the most miserable days of the year, was he there? Absolutely. And embracing the different types of contributors you have with a team and letting them feel a part, even if they're just an arm length away, is another way to help turn your team into a force multiplying effect. And of course, the biggest force multiplying effect, if you do the same with customers and contributors, would be with your community. And, a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, I got to check the community box and I've got to donate X or Y to some local charity to show like, hey, we're a business with a heart or something like that. That's not really what I'm after. I'm really after showing the community why you exist and what the point is and really giving without expectation. Because when people start to feel that, they want to make sure that your team continues to succeed. They will not let you fail.
Yeah. Yeah. When people get bought in, it's funny. You mentioned Ray. It was Ray, the delivery man.
Right.
How he's not on the payroll, but he'd go to bat for you. I'm sure if you needed a part or something, and I was just reading the biography of Tiger Woods actually. And there was a story in there about how Nike was working with this factory in China, and they had a good relationship with the guy who ran the factory, and Tiger Woods needed 6 golf balls in Germany overnight, and the only way to do it was to get the factory manager to personally fly them there. But he was excited about the mission of Nike and Nike Golf, and he jumped on the plane and took the balls with him and hand-delivered them to him. Not on the payroll, but just a guy who was bought into the mission. So it's so powerful.
That's a great example, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. And there are things that happen for that person to say, I feel a part of that success. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure that that individual, that brand keeps succeeding. Mm-hmm. Great example.
Yeah. So in these organizations, I think a lot of this too, another thing would be respect. How do people earn respect in the organization?
Very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
First, I think a lot of people forget the point or don't even understand the point of respect to begin with. Mm. Some people will say, yeah, respect. You got to respect me. I'm the C-level leader here, right? When I come in, you stand up because it's my title. No, that's not the respect, and that's not the point of respect. The true point of respect is contribution. That's the goal of this. The goal is mutual respect where anybody at any level of your organization is willing to raise their hand and say, excuse me, I think I have a better idea, a good idea. I think we should do X instead of Y. Their willingness to raise their hand without retribution is how you start to truly build a high-performance team. Now, to do that, it doesn't come from the respect of the title. It comes from the respect of your actions. You can get them in two ways, authority or actions, but the one that you want to build from is from actions. They have to see time and time again. In my book, I give a story about hunting this war criminal in Bosnia. And we had this young SEAL in our platoon. It was his first deployment. And we're out in the woods, and there are all these enemy troops being shuttled around. And we're a small group. It's like 4 of us. Mm-hmm. and we've run into a huge snag in the mission, and it had to do with taking a picture of the bad guy when he's driving by, and the camera couldn't focus because it was a first generation digital SLR, and we were trying to figure out, okay, well, how are we going to deal with this? Because they're telling us right now the mission's over, and we're all under these tarps, and we have all this cami on. We've been in the woods for like 5 or 6 days, and we're whispering and like, who's got an idea? And the youngest guy goes, sir, I got an idea. I'm like, what do you got? He's like, I think we should dig potholes. Potholes. And of course, here I am, Naval Academy grad, supposed to be the smartest guy in the room, or thinking I'm supposed to be the smartest guy in the room. And I'm like, okay, well, we could, fall a tree at just the right time and do these, all these complicated, ridiculous kind of Hollywood stunts. And here comes Cappy with this great idea. Mm-hmm. And he says, I think we should dig potholes. Now, it took a couple of nights, and we had to set up our infrared lights and make sure that we could sneak out there and do it when no one saw us doing it. And it worked. We dug a pothole big enough and deep enough that over time that car slowed down just enough so we could get the picture. And I bring that point up because what happened next is that you always have to debrief after a mission, and we come back stateside and we debrief this mission, and Cappy's in the room. He's his youngest kid there, and all the new young SEALs are coming in, and here I am, the senior lieutenant, and I say, oh, by the way, let me explain to you how this mission went from failure to success. And I call out the young SEAL, and I call out his great idea, and it was his idea. And I just kept saying, like, he saved that day. That's how we got this done. I mean, first of all, how do you think it made that young SEAL feel?
Oh, yeah, he's got to be beaming.
Right. And then second of all the new kids who are about to deploy are like, well, wait a minute, maybe I could have the great idea and save the mission. Mm-hmm. And how great would that be, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, how does that then make me as a leader look?
Yeah, great.
Like, oh my God, if you do something great when you're working with Mr. Mills, he's going to make you even better because he's going to call you out. He's not going to take the credit. He's going to make sure I get the credit.
Right, building people up.
And then after a while, people don't care about the credit because they know it's all about just getting the mission done. Mm-hmm. And that's respect. Mm-hmm. That's where you start to build mutual respect. And I go into more detail on the 3 R's of recognizing and realizing and requiring. But at the end of the day, it takes consistency of making sure that you respect their contributions and that you get them to hear, because you're really after diversity of thought, not diversity of heart.
Yeah, how do you build a diverse team that has that diversity of thought but not of heart?
So when I talk about heart, I'm talking about attitude. Mm-hmm. I'll take every color in the Crayola box. I'll take every sexual orientation there is. I could care less what you have for tattoos or colors of hair or ink. Pick it. It doesn't matter to me as long as your attitude's in the right place. Mm-hmm. If your attitude is in the wrong place, you are deciding to choose that attitude. You're deciding to always be negative. You're deciding to always look at the worst case scenario. You're deciding to bring things down. I won't tolerate it. It has to be removed. Mm-hmm. It is like a bad apple, because that can be just as infectious, if not worse. And we have a theme in SEAL Team called Misery Loves Company. There's a huge, massive log called Old Misery, and it's burned those letters, Misery Loves Company, in the side of it. And you can't have it. All the miserables get put on that log. Now, they happen to be miserables at that moment because they have failed that particular evolution and they get stuck on Old Miz. But that's the point, is you want different cultural backgrounds because they'll come at it from different perspectives. What you don't want is different negative attitudes. I'm not saying everyone has to be super peppy, cheerleading, positive, but I don't want seriously negative jerks It's basically the no asshole rule.
Yeah. Setting this as the standard for your group, how do you do that? Through stories or through talking to people or through some sort of company mission statement? How does that get baked in?
The very first thing is in the recruiting process, right in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask them stories right out of the gate. Tell me stories.
Huh.
Tell me a story about you, Brendan. Tell it to me, and you'll go, well, what's your favorite story, Brendan? I mean, I want to make it real free form in the beginning. And you'll come up with some story where you're either the hero or you were the guide. And I want to hear that difference. Were you the guide or were you the hero? What was better? Well, it was the day I won the, Super National Olympic Championship. I'm like, okay. Well, what was so great about that? Well, I did it. It was all me. But there were 7 other people in the boat. Yeah, but I was in the bow and I crossed the line first. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's all about you. That's one avenue, right? Understanding the hero and the guide relationship. Or maybe it's the villain. Maybe you're the victim in that, right? So you could then say, well, I'll give you my story, and it's a sob story when you're the victim, where it all happened to you. That's one line of questioning. Next line of questioning is, hey, Brendan, tell me about your greatest failure. And I kid you not. You know how many times people have said to me, they shrugged their shoulders, they've given me kind of a smirk, like maybe they've winced a little and said, ooh, Alden, I got to tell you, I really can't think of any because I guess I've just been lucky. I've succeeded at everything I've touched. Oh, really? That's a very short conversation after that point, because that tells me one of two things. One, you're so damn arrogant that you can't think of a single time where you've made a mistake. Or two, you've never pushed yourself to the point of failing.
Yeah.
Another parallel in the SEAL team that's very similar to being in business is if you aren't failing, you're not trying hard enough. Mm-hmm. Right? And in SEAL team or in business, what do you want to have happen when you're preparing to go into battle? You want to fail fast.
Yeah.
Is this going to work or isn't it? I need to know. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let's try it out and let's just do it in a way where we don't get people injured. Now, that's the difference between SEAL team and in business, right? I don't know, unless you're launching rockets, you don't want to really get people hurt, but you get my point. You get my point, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And so that's the same thing. It's like you want to find those times where they've had those great experiences of failure. Great. Tell me what you learned from it. Are they humble enough? Because you're after, I want humble, I want hungry, and then I want to know, are they competent enough to get the job done? Because we can teach them pretty much anything you need to know. Mm-hmm. But is there some other kind of magic that they can bring to this table? And usually that magic is going to stem from them being humble enough to know that they're eager to learn. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I go through those. And, I'll also ask them things like, hey, what are you most proud of? Huh. And I want to hear it. And then I'll ask them, hey, so tell me about your goals. What do you want to do in 5 years? Where do you want to be? Mm-hmm. Sometimes they'll say, oh, well, I want to be working here in 5 years. I'm like, come on. Tell me what you really want. So
you're sorting for all of this right from the get-go, and that's how you're finding that cultural fit.
You're hiring for culture.
Mm-hmm.
You're hiring for culture.
Got it. Well, Alden, before I ask my last question, if people want to learn more from you, where should they look for you online?
They can come to my website, alden-mills.com, ALDEN-mills.com.
All right. And we'll put links to that and to your book as well down in the show notes for anybody listening.
That'd be great.
All right. And Alden, my final question is, what can a leader do to create more leaders in their organization?
Take care of the ones you have. Inspire them to do more than they originally thought, and do it with engaging them and enabling them to succeed. Put them in positions of leadership responsibility. Once you finally attain that position of authority in your organization, do you know the number one thing you need to start doing?
What's that?
Give it away. Isn't that ironic?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You work to get to be the president, the CEO, the SVP, the EVP, and then you're going to turn right around and give that power that you've worked so hard to get to the people beneath you that are actually above you, because you should be thinking of it like an upside down pyramid, that you're serving everybody else. Mm-hmm. But the more you start to enable and empower people from the power position that you're in, they're going to give it back to you in the greatest form of power that you can get.
Wow.
Called
Awesome.
Gratitude.
Awesome. Alden, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I love what you're doing, and I hope this fires up your listeners to go out there and make those big, hairy, audacious dreams become reality.
Everybody, that was Alden Mills, 3-time Navy SEAL platoon commander, former CEO of Perfect Fitness, one of the fastest growing companies in America, and author of Unstoppable Teams, the 4 Essential Actions of High Performance Leadership. And if you want to help us get more great guests like this on the show, then be sure to give us a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. That's a huge help, and we'll catch you next time.